I want to ask about how this money has been spent, because clearly there is a tremendous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse, and a lot of our hard-earned taxpayers' dollars spent on things that don't even make sense that they've been spent on. So, Mr. Dodaro, if you don't mind answering a few of my questions, can you tell me, as our comptroller of the United States, how much COVID cash was given to abortion?
I do not know that answer. I don't have that answer.
Oh, okay. So I can tell you Planned Parenthood clinics received $80 billion in COVID relief loans, which is hard to understand how that happened. Mr. Dodaro, can you tell me how much money COVID cash went towards diversity, equity, and inclusion or racism issues?
Again, we have not looked at that issue, so I don't know.
Oh, geez. Well, I can tell you the Pennsylvania Humanities Council did receive $1.4 million in relief and used it for equity and geographic diversity. I'm not sure how that helped in a pandemic time. Mr. Dodaro, can you tell me how much COVID cash went to CRT?
CRT?
Critical race theory in education. It's a racist curriculum used to teach children that somehow their white skin is not equal to black skin and other things in education.
Yeah. No, I do not know that, but I do know that there's provisions that the federal funds generally are not used, are supposed to be used for curriculum.
Oh.
That's a state.
Oh, Mr. Dodaro, I have to tell you, in Illinois, they received $5.1 billion at an elementary school there that used it for equity and diversity. So it's being used for these things. Mr. Dodaro, can you tell me how much money was given to Drag Queen Story Hour?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Who?
Drag Queen Story Time, where men dress up as women and read confusing books to children.
Okay. First, I thought you said dry clean. So, I'm sorry. No, I don't know the answer to either one of those two.
Oh, we need to look into this, and I urge you to do that. Bradbury Sullivan LGBT Community Center in Pennsylvania received $16,000 for Drag Queen Story Time from COVID cash. I think this is an issue that needs to be looked into. A lot of this money went to things that should have never gone to.
Sorry, the thought came to me. To whom much is given, much is required. And I realized that this is not about me. I have been given the opportunity to speak up on behalf of numerous current and former Bureau employees who feel similarly, but they do not have a voice. I am not here today to show favor to any political party. I am here to stand for the truth based on my experience at the FBI. In all humility, I hope to make an impact in creating a stronger agency, which is what Americans deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Thank you for your service. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
I want to echo the chairman. Thank you, Ms. Parker, for your extraordinary service and your courage for being here today. Mr. Turley, I want to start with you. The Twitter files laid bare for the American people what you correctly call unconstitutional, quote, censorship by surrogate. Matt Taibbi writes, quote, Twitter's contact with the FBI was constant and pervasive as if it were a subsidiary. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do. What we know on the record so far shows a relationship that goes beyond this sort of informal exchange of ideas.
You're correct. In fact, isn't it true that leading up to the 2020 election, Twitter had weekly meetings with not just the FBI, with DOJ, with DHS, with DNI to conduct this unconstitutional censorship by surrogate? We know that because the Twitter files, correct?
Correct.
And it was not just meetings, not just censorship of stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story. We also now know that the FBI paid Twitter over $3.4 million of taxpayer funds to censor these stories before the 2020 election. Is that correct?
That money was paid. Twitter confirmed that.
And the Twitter files are just the tip of the iceberg because there's so much more. There was a corrupt revolving door at the highest levels between the FBI and Twitter. Look no further than Jim Baker, former general counsel at the FBI who helped unlawfully investigate Donald Trump in the 2016 election. Or look at Jim Comey's deputy chief of staff, who became the director of strategy at Twitter. Isn't it true, according to the Twitter files, that there were so many FBI officials who then went to work at Twitter that created their own Slack channel and crib sheet for onboarding? The Twitter files confirm that, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware, as the American people are aware, that according to polling, of the people that were made aware of the Hunter Biden laptop story, 53% would have changed their vote, including 61% of Democrats. This is the definition of election meddling, and it's the definition of election meddling by the FBI on behalf of Democrats, paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. It's collusion, it's corruption, and it's unconstitutional. Ms. Parker, I want to go to you next about your experience at the FBI, because this is not just about the Twitter files, which folks are focused on because of the news it made. It's about a systemic rot in the culture and the politicization of the leadership of the FBI, and it needs to be rooted out. Let's take a step back. Let's look at the targeting illegally of parents who wanted to stand up for their kids at school board meetings. On September 29th, 2021, the National School Boards Association sent a letter to Joe Biden equating parents at school board meetings to domestic terrorists. And on October 4th, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued a memorandum to the FBI and U.S. attorneys that the department would use federal enforcement tools to target and prosecute these parents. Do you consider parents as domestic terrorists?
I do not consider parents as domestic terrorists. No, I do not.
No, and neither do the American people. But there's more to this story. It goes back further than that initial letter on September 29th, because the letter didn't happen organically. It was solicited. It was solicited by the White House and by the Secretary of Education. Essentially, the Biden administration laid the predicate for which it used to justify illegally targeting the American people, targeting these parents. Is it proper protocol as a former FBI officer to set that predicate, to manufacture the reasoning to justify opening an investigation?
I believe that no one should be targeted for free speech and that violence should never be tolerated under any circumstance, but it should definitely not, no one should be targeted because they want to speak up at a school board meeting.
This was a setup, and it was the setup, and it's the real definition of weaponization of the government against the American people. And it's not just this example of targeting parents at School Boards Association. It goes back to the opening of Crossfire Hurricane. It goes back to the faulty FISA application. It goes back to what we heard on that first panel from Senators Grassley and Johnson. It goes back to the suppression illegally of the Hunter Biden laptop story paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. This corruption needs to be rooted out, and it's not just about protecting the U.S. Constitution. It is most importantly about protecting the American people from the weaponization of the federal government against them.
For the record, Mr. Baker, Ms. Gotti, Mr. Roth, Mr. Navaroli, are you here under the advice of counsel, and do you have counsel present?
Yes, sir.
That was a yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I was subpoenaed
That's
to
good to
appear.
know. I'm glad you all have counsel present. Mr. Chairman, for the for submission for the record, I'd like consent to submit the Twitter files dated December the 8th, posted by the New York Post regarding the suppression of conservative commentators. Like that submitted.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to also submit for the record a timeline of events with cited sources outlining strong evidence of the Biden family organized criminal actions would certainly indicate that we've crossed the threshold of reasonable suspicion. I'd like this timeline submitted for the record.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, just where is that from, that timeline?
Timeline in my hand, boss. I'll get it to you shortly. Bottom line is
Higgins,
the FBI
that was
had
basically
the
fuck
Biden
you.
crime family laptop for a year. They knew it was leaking. They knew it would hurt the Biden campaign. So the FBI used its relationship with Twitter to suppress criminal evidence being revealed about Joe Biden 1 month before the 2020 elections. You, ladies and gentlemen, interfered with the United States of America 2020 presidential election, knowingly and willingly. That's the bad news. It's going to get worse because this is the investigation part. Later comes the arrest part. The attorneys are familiar with that. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to spend 5 hours with these ladies and gentlemen doing depositions surely yet to come. But for right now, I'll yield the balance of my time to my.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Matt Taibbi, a respected reporter who published much of the Twitter files, said, quote, Twitter's contact with FBI was constant and pervasive, as if it were a subsidiary. Now, I want to better understand why he would suggest that. Mr. Roth, while at Twitter, how many meetings did you have with the FBI?
I couldn't say for sure, but I would
More
say
than 10?
That's a
More than
reasonable
20?
estimate. I couldn't say for sure.
More than 50?
That seems a bit high.
Many meetings with the FBI. Well, we know how many FBI agents worked at Twitter while you were there?
I don't believe any active FBI
Former
agents.
FBI agents. How many worked there while you were there?
I'm aware of perhaps 2.
Well, we know of at least 9 because they started the BU group chat, BU for Bureau. Now, Mr. Roth, did the FBI ever ask you to share information like users' communication data without going through proper legal channels?
No, they did not, and I would have refused if they had.
That's correct. I see that you denied Agent Chan's request for access to Twitter's data feed. What's sick isn't that you would deny it, it's that the FBI would even ask you for the private data of American citizens without going through legal channels of the law. Now, I want to remind you, Mr. Roth, that you are under oath. Did the FBI ever ask you to do anything that was illegal or questionably legal?
I'm not a lawyer, but certainly not to the best of my recollection or knowledge.
Now, from the hearing that I've been a part of today, it's almost impossible to tell where the FBI ends and where Twitter begins. We have Mr. Baker here, a former FBI agent, and there seems to be a revolving door between the FBI and Twitter itself. Even Mr. Baker said that there was no collusion with the federal government and Twitter. But Mr. Baker, that's you. You are the collusion between the federal government and the FBI. And now with it, this is such a problem because we're seeing censorship all over. Mr. Roth, Ms. Gaddy, did either of you approve the shadow banning of my account at Lauren Boebert? Yes or no?
No, I did not.
Not to the best of my recollection.
Well, let me refresh your memory because on March 12th, 2021, and Mr. Roth, I know you looked at it because Fascist Twitter 1.0 had a public interest exceptions policy, which means for members of Congress to be shadow banned, it had to go before you, Mr. Roth. So I'll ask again, did you shadow ban my account? Yes or no?
Again, not to the best of my recollection.
So the answer is, Mr. Roth, yes, you did. I found out last night from Twitter staff that you suppressed my account for this tweet. It's a freaking joke about Hillary Clinton being angry that she couldn't rig her election. It's a joke, but in response, being the sinister overlords that you all are, you placed a 90-day account filter so I could not be found. And now we see here that Twitter staff said the visibility filter on my account excluded me from top searches, prevented notifications for non-followers, and much more. This is considered an aggressive visibility filter. You silenced members of Congress from communicating with their constituents. You silenced me from communicating with the American people over a freaking joke. Now, who the hell do you think that you are? Election interference? Yeah, I would say that that was taking place because of you four sitting here. The Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed. A sitting member of Congress was suppressed. A sitting president was banned from Twitter. You know, I bet that Putin is sitting in the Kremlin wishing he had as much election interference as you four here today. We've heard about threats to democracy. Well, what about shutting down a duly elected member of Congress? This is fundamental to our nation's governance, and you all attacked that very foundation. 230 protections? Well, those are for publishers, not for editors. And it's clear you were not acting as publishers, you were acting as editors. And Mr. Chairman, I think it's far past time that we remove 230 protections for big tech platforms who are abusing this protection. And let me just say, I'm not angry for myself. I'm not angry because I was silenced. I can reach out to Elon and to his staff, and I can see what's happened. And I can sit here today and hold you all in account. I am angry for the millions of Americans who were silenced because of your decisions, because of your actions, because of your collusion with the federal government. They can't reach out to Elon. They can't sit here today and hold you into account. We don't know where the FBI ends and Twitter begins. But I do want to thank
Mr.
Elon
Chairman, we're
Musk
over
for
17
firing
seconds.
you for
Ms. Gaddy,
and
Mr.
saving
Roth,
free speech.
and Ms.
even-
Navaroli, you can consider your speech canceled during my time because you canceled mine. You see, you permanently banned my personal Twitter account, and it was my campaign account also. So let's talk about election interference, shall we? January 2nd, 2002, you permanently banned my Twitter account. This was the account that I would put my campaign ads on, raise money on, fight back when attacked with lies, and be able to talk to my voters in my district. But you banned it. And then let me explain. My account was not reinstated until November 21st, 2022. That was after my election on November 8th. You know, at your company or your former company where you worked, Twitter employees, over 98% of them donate to Democrats. So while you coordinated with DHS, the FBI, the CIA, our government, and outside groups to permanently ban, shadow ban conservative Americans and candidates like me and the former president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, you were censoring and wrongfully violating our First Amendment free speech rights. Guess what? None of you hold security clearances. None of you are elected, and none of you represent 750,000 people like I do. Let's explain. 52 United States Law 10101. No person shall intimidate, threaten, coerce, or attempt to stop any other person for the purpose of interfering with their rights to vote or to vote as he may choose. You didn't shadow ban or permanently ban my Democrat opponent. No, you did that to me. And that was wrong, and it was against the law. You see, not only that, was it me that you violated my First Amendment rights? You violated countless conservative Americans. These were doctors that were trying to tell the truth about COVID, doctors that were having success treating people with ivermectin that you all would not allow to be talked about on your platform. These were parents complaining about their school boards, teaching gender lies in their schools, biological males entering their daughters' bathrooms and sports. These were also people questioning the 2020 election, and guess what? That's Americans' First Amendment right. These were people talking about voting machines. You know what? Democrats did that in 2019, before the 2020 election. On Twitter, people could question elections such as 2016, saying Hillary won, but in 2020, no one could question elections saying Trump won. You abused the power of a large corporation, big tech, to censor Americans. And you want to know something? Guess what? I'm so glad that you're censored down. I'm so glad you've lost your jobs. Thank God Elon Musk bought Twitter. And you know what? Let's talk about something a little bit further. It's amazing to me, Mr. Roth, as the head and trust of safety at Twitter, your ability, or should I say inability, to remove child porn. Now, here's something that disgusts me about you. In your doctoral dissertation entitled Gay Data, you argued that minors should have access to Grindr, an adult male gay hookup app. Minors? Really? You know, Elon Musk took over Twitter and he banned 44,000 accounts that were promoting child porn. You permanently banned my Twitter account, but you allowed child porn all over Twitter. Twitter had become a platform, you said, connecting queer young adults. You also wrote on Twitter in 2010, can high school students ever meaningfully consent to sex with their teachers? In 2021, while you were the director of trust and safety on Twitter, an underage boy and his mother announced a lawsuit against Twitter because Twitter was benefiting from and refused to remove a lewd video featuring this boy and another minor. That is repulsive. But you violated me. What were my tweets? Okay, let's talk about them. I was talking about the deaths being reported on VAERS. By the way, that's on the CDC website. I was also saying that I didn't think any entity should enforce a non-FDA approved vaccine or mask. Guess what? A lot of people agreed with me, but you called that COVID misinformation. By the way, I'm a member of Congress and you're not. I also said the controversial COVID-19 vaccines should not be forced on our military. You want to know something? Republicans stopped that in the NDAA.
Ladies, time has expired.
And your time has expired. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Weaponized against them. If there wasn't such a revolving door between Department of Justice senior officials and lobbying?
I don't quite follow the premise of your question, sir.
It's pretty easy. There's a revolving door between senior officials at the DOJ and the lobbying profession. Do you think that that gives the public more or less trust?
There are rules governing what employment, and this is based on my understanding, I've been government for 15 years, governing what post-government employment can be. One, what individuals' actions can be once they're employed elsewhere, but also what they're allowed to do.
Lobbying is influence peddling, and you are the principal at the Rabin Group, which is a lobbying firm. And I would observe the reporting of Project Veritas, where Jordan Tristan Walker, who's a director of research and development, said on a recording, one of the things we're exploring is why don't we just manipulate COVID ourselves, mutate COVID via directed evolution? Pfizer is a revolving door for all government officials. It's pretty good for industry, to be honest. It's bad for everyone else in America. Pfizer is one of the clients of the lobbying firm that you're a principal of, isn't it?
I do not represent Pfizer. I do not know, sir.
You're a principal of the Rabin Group, right?
No, that is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the clients of the Rabin Group, which include Pfizer.
Without objection.
Not just Pfizer, but Google as well. And in response to the Twitter files, we saw a statement come from the FBI where they said correspondence between the FBI and Twitter show nothing more than examples of our traditional, long-standing, and ongoing federal government and private sector engagements. Are there such engagements between the FBI and Google?
When you say such engagements, sir, I don't quite
Does Google engage with the FBI, Mr. Williams?
I don't work for either Google or the FBI, sir.
I'd have to again point you to your own client list that you advertise on your own website, which includes Google. Does it surprise you that at the Rabin Group's website, Pfizer and Google are clients?
It does not surprise me, sir, no.
The Soros-funded Open Society is one of the clients as well. Does that surprise you?
Sir, I don't have our client list in front of me right now. I will, assuming that's what it says, I will take your word for it.
Yeah, I would think that maybe one of the legislative initiatives we could pursue would be to tighten this revolving door that folks at Pfizer and folks at Big Tech seem to freely acknowledge, in which you seem to be the incarnate of the revolving door. Mr. Baker and Ms. Parker, I want to assure you both that we come not to trash the FBI, but to rescue the FBI.
It wasn't the first shot, but it was the second shot that I now developed asthma that has never gone away since I had the second shot. I have tremors in my left hand, and I have the occasional heart pain that no doctor can explain, and I've had a battery of tests. I find it extremely alarming Twitter's unfettered censorship spread into medical fields and affected millions of Americans by suppressing expert opinions from doctors and censoring those who disagree with the CDC. I have great regrets about getting the shot because of the health issues that I now have that I don't think are ever going to go away. And I know that I'm not the only American who has those kinds of concerns. Another example of what Twitter has done to censor folks is from Dr. Martin Koldorf, a Harvard-educated epidemiologist, who once tweeted, "COVID vaccines are important for high-risk people and their caretakers. Those with prior natural infection do not need it, nor children." The Twitter files reveal this tweet was deemed false information because it ran contrary to the CDC. So my first question this morning of Ms. Gaddy, may I ask of you, where did you go to medical school?
I did not go to medical school.
I'm sorry?
I did not go to medical school.
That's what I thought. Why do you think you or anyone else at Twitter have the medical expertise to censor a doctor's expert opinion?
Our policies regarding COVID were designed to protect individuals. We were seeing
You guys censored Harvard-educated doctors, Stanford-educated doctors, doctors that are educated in the best places in the world, and you silenced those voices.